Creality reached out to me to see if I wanted to test out their new Falcon A1 Pro laser cutter. I said, sure. They did inform me, though, that this is a prototype.
We have no choice. We will have to test the new prototype.
I was informed that the machine is pretty much what you would receive. However, the software is still in development. With that being said, let's go over some of the features. Pre-packaged, it comes with a 20-watt blue laser. There's also the optional 2-watt IR. With speeds up to 600 millimeters per second, AI support vision system, intelligent camera for precise positioning, a 4.3-inch touchscreen, autofocus laser module. It works with Falcon design space and light burn, has automatic air assist, and has a work area of 358 by 268 millimeters. The targeted price point is $1,099 US. The 2-watt IR is an additional $499. Creality is actually doing some super early bird pricing. The way this will work is that there will be a pre-sale period. So from 8.5 to 8.6, 200 units will be 40% off, then 8.6 through 8.18, 400 units will be 30% off, and then 8.8 through 8.18, 600 units will be 20% off, and then different tiers of discounts for the IR module. And there will be affiliate links down below to purchase if you so choose. The optional accessories I received for testing was this honeycomb bed and the IR module. I would suggest definitely getting the honeycomb bed. On the side of the machine, you have this nice accessible emergency stop button. And additionally on the side here, we have a Type-C connection. I don't know if that's for accessories or something. Another Type-C to interface with your computer, an air inlet for your air assist, a rotary input, and you have a key lock, an air pump, and power, and along with the regular on-off. So lots of stuff happening on the side. And let's go ahead and attach our touchscreen. And it's nice to see that this tape is not excessively sticky, comes right off, and we're going to plug in this cable. Now this cable is keyed so it can only fit in one way. So don't force it if it doesn't fit. Swing it around, and it just slides right into its holder. That's it. There's some nice flexible tubing that goes into the air inlet. Now let's plug in the air pump. There's a stopper on the air pump that you're going to have to remove. And then plug in this hose right into the air pump. This air pump has some little squishy feet. Make sure it's on top of your work surface. Now let's go ahead and plug in your data cable that goes into the computer, followed by the power cord. Next, you're provided a set of keys. This is for safety, so no one can operate the laser unattended. So that's definitely a nice safety feature to have. Lock out those kids, right? You don't want them messing around with your nice new machine, right? So, you know, you can always take those keys whenever you want. There is an exhaust hose that you're going to need to connect, and please make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area when using this machine. And what sets this laser apart from many others is that this actually has a touchscreen. When you power it up, it goes through a self-checking, and then you're going to be greeted with language. I'm going to choose English because that's all I know how to speak. And then, of course, you're going to have to review this lovely privacy policy. And I would always suggest reading it. I don't know if you need a lawyer or not, but definitely worthwhile to read, especially when, you know, it's using your information and everything and how it's being sold and stuff like that. So you really don't have a choice. So just hit the box and hit next. Then you're going to find a Wi-Fi source of your choice and connect to it. And then once you're connected, you're going to go ahead and be greeted with, you know, what time zone you're in. And then we can go ahead and just go ahead and navigate the screen to see all the features it has. Touchscreen kind of reminds me of a 3D printer. It has basically all the same type of things on here. So let's go ahead and continue on. Now this does have an auto-focusing system, but they do provide this where you could actually do a manual focus if you so choose. On the right side there's a lever, and you're just going to move it up and then move it down to lock it to the focusing height. Again, this is for manual focusing. Now I do want to remove some of this protective covering, and to do that we're going to have to remove the front handle and this little piece of metal, and then go ahead and peel the front plastic off. Then we're going to have to do a rinse and repeat and secure these screws and close the front cover. I have to say, the build quality on this is rather striking. Everything just looks really nice, really thought out. I love that you have 2 access doors that are magnetically locked, so if you open it, the laser will stop. This thing is just built great. But let's go ahead and continue on to testing. First thing you're going to need to do is align your camera. If you're familiar with light burn, it's basically the same setup. You're going to use this dotted piece of paper to align your camera. We're going to open Falcon Design Space, and then we're going to do the camera calibration. You'll be placing this card, and you're going to do 9 get images, and you want to have a score above 50. As you'll see here, I'm placing the card into those sections, and then once you're done, you're going to hit next. You're going to take the piece of wood that was provided, and we're going to frame it, and then we're going to start the engraving. And again, this is very similar to the light burn setup for the camera. It's going to lay out 4 separate quadrants here with crosshairs that we're going to have to align. You're going to click on Get Image, and we're going to zoom in, and then we're going to go to each of these 4 sections here, and then we're going to double click to line up our cross. Then we're going to move over and do that to each cross and make sure that's nice and centered. When you have it nice and centered, you can then zoom back out and just make sure everything lines up accordingly. Then once you are done, all you have to do is hit complete. This process only took me about 5 minutes to complete. And the next screen would just do a verification that, your camera is now calibrated. Now I captured the image, and now I'm going to see how well the camera system works and how accurate it is. So I went ahead and drew some circles over all the circles on the calibration piece of wood. And I'm going to change from engraving to line cutting, and it's automatically doing speed of 500, power 100%, and 1 pass. And it's set to basswood board. So we're going to go ahead and click on Start. Now the extraction still continues after it's done, so you want to wait until the fan stops or the smoke clears before you open it. As you can see, so far it's pretty darn accurate. Cut them out nicely, almost dead on, and if we take out our little coins here, you can see pretty darn nice. Very clean cut and almost dead on. Now I want to test the camera a little bit more, and I'm going to bring up something a little bit later on in the video. But for this, right now you'll see that my little square here is a little bit offset, and that's done on purpose because it's a little bit closer in the lower left. So let's go ahead and cut this square out. And this is real time for the cutting. This is about 3 millimeters basswood. And the rest of the video will be done on time lapses because those are a lot longer projects. But I just wanted to give you an understanding of how fast it could cut 3 millimeter basswood and how clean it does cut. So far it looks to be very, very accurate. You can see right there that it got really close to the lower left, just like I wanted it. So let's go ahead and take it out and take a look. Yep, very accurate. And I have to say that Air Assist did a great job. Very little charring, almost none. And yeah, great job. Let's continue on. Now let's cut some cedar. This is about 9 millimeters thick. And it automatically set the speed to 200 with a power of 102 times. For processing the job. I really don't know if it's going to need 2 times, especially for that speed and power. This is a 20-watt module, so let's go ahead and test it. We can see that the laser is actually penetrating through the board, and it's going through the honeycomb. And it's going for its second pass. We actually see the separation, so I'm going to stop the job. It definitely did not need 2 passes for this. Again, we're going to wait for the exhaust to stop running and make sure the smoke is cleared before we open up the access door. Try to get into that habit. And just through experience, I know that a 20-watt laser module at that speed should cut out in 1 pass, and it did. So the AI function here just was a little bit off, but nice clean cut. So let's continue on with some engraving. Now this is just a piece of cedar that's about 9 millimeters thick. I imported my logo, and it set the engraving to about power of 30. I wanted to change it to 10. I wanted a little bit lighter of a shading. In the upper left, there's a thing called filter. And you can set grayscale, black and white, and jitter, and stucco. I think we're going to use stucco. but I want to change the grayscale. I think I can bring it down to 0.55, and that looks pretty darn good. So let's start engraving with that. And of course, this is going to be trial and error because this is a logo and it definitely has a little bit of shading, but doesn't have much. So you're going to want to test images and pictures and see how it's going to turn out. Now, when you're engraving on wood, you are battling the grain. So there's going to be lots of inconsistencies. And this will show when I take it out of the engraver, and you will see. I have to say, for my very first test, came out really nice. And you can see the grains, how it is a little inconsistent. Now, if you did something like MDF, you will see a lot more equal of engraving here. But overall, I am very happy how this turned out. Again, testing is key. So let's continue on to something else. Now this does what's called batch engraving. So I have 3 pieces of wood here, 3mm thick, and I'm going to click on my logo and then click on Smart Fill. And then I'm going to go ahead and highlight my logo with the board, very important, and click on Smart Fill. And this is real time. That's how long it took to fill them in. Now, say that if I click on one of these, it shows the power at 20. Each of these are going to be 20. They are all linked together for the power. So if I want to change it to, say, 25, now all of them will be 25. So these settings will be for each and every one of them. But I'm going to bring it back down to 20. And let's start the engraving. One thing you'll notice with this basswood is 3mm thick, but it's not exactly flat. You'll see this right here. The laser is actually kind of pushing it up and down a little bit. It's rocking back and forth. So you may want to use some magnets and stuff to actually help keep the wood or other materials pressed down and so it doesn't shift on you. Now, compared to my last one, I wanted to have this logo a little bit darker. And I definitely achieved that because I knew that this grain was going to be a challenge. And you can see that still is a challenge. The grain is pretty far apart on all of these. So again, you're going to want to do trial and error. And wood is going to be very inconsistent, like I mentioned before. But take a look at this. So now the grain's going the other way. It almost like the grain is getting skipped over by the laser. This is absolutely normal, and that is just the way it is. So when you're picking out your wood, you definitely want to try to find wood that has a grain that's a little bit more consistent. And that way your images do come out a little bit better, at least better than mine. So let's continue on. So I wanted to try a little experiment. I have these ceramic coasters I have for a while, but I also have this marking spray. So I wonder if I spray this marking spray and engrave this coaster, will it actually mark it? And guess what? It worked. Not too bad. Yeah, we have Falcon Design Space, speed at 4,000, power at 90, and it took only about 15 minutes. And this is permanent. It's actually still a little wet, so it's a little bit off shade here, but yeah, nicely engraved, and it looks pretty darn cool. Now this is another test. And typically with glass, with the diode laser, I would have my interface layer using tempera paint. But we're going to try this laser marking spray again and see how well it works. You're going to want to do 1, maybe 2 even coats, and it takes 5 to 10 minutes for it to dry. And here are the results. Not too bad. This was at 4,000 speed, 90% power, and took about 12 and a half minutes to engrave. But yeah, I would suggest sticking with tempera paint, and you could actually watch some of my other laser engraving videos on how that's done. Next, I engraved some slate coasters. These were pretty darn easy, and it was a speed at 4,000, power at 30. And I want to remind you that there's going to be inconsistency with the edges, and you'll see that there's chipping around them, and also inconsistencies with the material itself. It is natural, so you see under the wife right there, it's a little discolored, and that's just because of the material itself. But I think these came out really nice. So I wanted to try my logo on a slate coaster, and this time I'm actually picking coaster instead of trying my own settings. Let's see how well it turns out. So Creality has their own settings for coasters, speed of 7,000, power at 20. Now what I want to do is go back up to filter, and we are going to invert this image. And you're going to want to invert your image anytime that you are engraving like on a dark surface with an image. That way, it actually does the reverse. Now I may want to have dabbled with my gray a little bit more because we can see that the YouTube logo on the bottom really isn't showing up that well. And this is where you're going to want to have some scrap material around, or some material that maybe you've messed up in the past. That way you could test it more thoroughly. But I believe for possibly my first test, this may look okay. I did wipe it down to get all the dust off, but yeah, actually my logo turned out pretty darn nice. But we can see that the YouTube logo, not so well. Again, I could just mess around with the grayscale a little bit more. You notice by my face there, yep, there's a little bit of a blemish, but that's because there's inconsistencies just like the last coaster. And when you are dealing with natural materials, yep, it's definitely going to be inconsistent. You can see the garage also has a little bit of blemishes, but overall, I am pretty darn satisfied with how this came out. I'll definitely try to tweak my settings later on and see if I can get something better. Now you also have the option of purchasing the 2-watt IR. This is for $4.99. The 2-watt IR allows you to engrave metals. All this time we've been using the 20-watt blue diode laser. That's good for like wood, plastics, and rock. Now we should be able to install this in about a minute. On the left of the module is a little lever that you can move to the left, and you simply lift up the connector. And then you unlock it on the right hand side, move the drag chain if needed, and lift up the whole module. Slide in the other module, and you really want to make sure it's bottomed out on the bottom there, and then you're going to move that lever again to the left. It's very hard to see, and then slide it in and then lock it in place. Again, you want to make sure that's down all the way, not what I did right there. Now this does have a red dot laser focusing system. You're going to want to place your object on the red dot. However, if it's reflective, it will not actually focus. As you see here, it didn't even bring it to the center, and it just went all the way in the back. So to actually remedy this, you're going to want to put in like a piece of paper right over there. You can see the dots right there. You hit focus, and that's simple. Now I did test out this dog tag with the Falcon Design Space, a speed at 200, power at 100, and it took about 12 minutes to engrave. You notice that the contrast is more like a gray here, and there's a little bit of overscanning, but overall it's pretty darn legible at almost any angle, except for the camera. So I did another test here, and you'll see that it definitely looks a lot better. You have a speed at 100 and a power at 100. You can see that's definitely a lot more legible and almost at any angle. This is at a lower DPI or line interval, so you do see the jagged edges. But otherwise, for 15 minutes, not too bad. Very legible, and I'm pretty happy with the results here. So now let's continue on to one more thing. And my wife went to the dollar store and found a metal spatula to engrave. Now I did have to put a black business card on there so it would focus. And I removed the honeycomb bed, and I am using a welding magnet. Now this is also chrome plated, which means that it will release toxic fumes, so you want to make sure you're in a well ventilated area, extracting outside or through an air purification system. It is nice to see that this welding magnet did hold the spatula in place, a speed of 100, power 100, and just over 2 hours to finish engraving. So what I did was take it to the sink and hit it with a magic eraser, and look at that. Now I didn't want to do any type of deep engraving because with this you don't want basically your your food to stick to the spatula. So this actually reminds me of like the engraving that you see on some chrome plated tools like sockets. I think it came out really nice. And that kind of wraps up my testing of the Falcon A1 Pro. All my testing has gone back to Creality. I've been testing this for about 2 weeks now. Now, I did mention that this is a prototype. The unit itself is a prototype, and definitely the software is still in beta. But I still would like to give my overall thoughts of this. Now, I have to say, this thing is just built so well. I mean, it is very well lit as soon as it lights up. There we go. It has a Core XY motion system, which is nice and smooth. The rear fan is removable for the guard to make it nice and easy to clean. It has a nice big drag chain with the air assist built in. And of course the camera system that you can select on and off. There's again the fan with the exhaust that's built in, and the air assist that's also built in that turns on and off automatically depending on the job. Both the top and front panel have safety switches built in, so if either door is open, the laser will pause operation. And I really do like that you have nice viewing, not only from the top, but from the front as well. And here you can see the magnetic switches, so everything is just so well and neatly packaged. You don't really see any of the wires. The cable management's really nice, tucked away behind access panels. Yeah, I would say that this is definitely one nicely designed machine. Now, if there's one accessory that I would suggest buying, it would definitely be the honeycomb bed. This will allow you to get nice clean laser cuts. I did not see any visible light leakage when operation, so I did feel safe that this was going to work as intended. The exhaust did seem adequate, and I did use a filtration system with mine. Now, there's not really much to critique, but maybe a little bit with the software. Given that the software is in beta, it did a pretty good job. One of my major critiques is like text and stuff. There's only two options, speed and power. You need to have a lot more control, maybe even DPI and other things. That way you could actually get a nice finer engraving. A prime example of this is the dog tag that I engraved earlier. You can see that it's pretty jagged around the edges, and increasing the line interval will help with that. Now it does say that it's light burn compatible, but the camera does not work with light burn. And I did pass that feedback along to Creality. Now again, this was a first look of a prototype unit and beta software. So if you're inclined to, I would suggest watching other content creators when this is actually out on production and readily available to the masses. That way you can get a fair assessment. However, if you found this to be very helpful and you are looking to purchase this machine, there will be affiliate links down below that cost you absolutely nothing more. It just helps support the channel. I really appreciate you tuning in to Tripod's Garage. Please have a wonderful day, evening, or weekend, or whenever you decide to watch this video. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you again on Tripod's Garage.